Thank you very much. Thank you very much, and good afternoon. As you rightly pointed out, the last time I was on this stage, I was talking to you about transparency in media trading, which possibly made me the least popular person in the festival last year. But this year we're going to be a little bit more collaborative. We're going to be talking about IMC, Integrated Marketing Communications. For those of you who are not aware, the WFA, we basically represent advertisers globally. So our members are made up of 55 national advertisers associations. We have quite a few of them here today. ABBA from Brazil, A&A from the US, UPA from Italy, ISBA in the UK. And in addition to those, we also represent 70 of the world's largest multinationals. And you're going to see 3 of those on the panel here today. So for those members, what we do is we organize, amongst other things, peer-to-peer groups. And our panel today is going to be a bit of a window, if you like, on one of those groups, which is our IMC Forum, which, as the name suggests, Integrated Marketing Communications. Just to clarify what we mean by IMC, this is not about taking all your money from TV and shifting it into shiny new platforms, or just about using more channels. This is really about ensuring your marketing activities are working together more effectively to ensure profitable growth and consistent brand behaviors as well. So what I'm going to do now is just take you through some results from a survey that we conducted in preparation for these 2 sessions. Thank you very much for the over 150 of you who responded to our survey, mostly agencies and advertisers. And I'm going to just have a look at the results from both, similar format that we had last year. And then that's going to basically act as stimulus for our panel. So, first question you should be seeing behind me here. First statement, is integrated marketing communications is a priority for our organization. Happily, 93% of agencies agreed, and 81% of advertisers. Actually, if that number was any lower, I probably would be looking for a new job. So that's good news. We know that IMC is important. And then the second one was advertisers talk about test and learn, but when times are tough, they revert back to the tried and tested. So this is us really saying, look, advertisers appreciate that sometimes there is room for improvement. So perhaps slightly self-effacing in some ways. And a large majority, again, of agencies, 92% agreed with that statement, 75% of advertisers did. And for those of you who work in our industry will know when times are tough, companies become more risk-averse, so perhaps not a huge shock. But one that is slightly more contentious, I think, advertisers aren't being honest when they ask for channel neutral. So channel neutral is often something, as many of you know, appears on briefs. And the majority of agencies, 51% saying that they agreed with that statement, and maybe slightly surprising, a third of our members actually saying they agreed with that as well. So perhaps not always exactly what they're looking for and when they're asking for channel neutral. So there's room for improvement, and that's one of the reasons why ourselves and Naked Communications created something that we call the IMC Scorecard, which is basically a benchmarking tool that enables our members to rate how important they think the different elements of the IMC process are, and then how they feel they're performing, and then compare themselves to a pool. So those logos that I showed you at the start of this session. That infographic we've just released today, so hopefully some of my colleagues will be tweeting that, so you should be able to have a look at it at your leisure. I just wanted to highlight 3 gaps, the biggest gaps as identified by our members. So the companies represent about $32 billion who took part in that. First one is setting the right KPI. So we heard from Ital this morning. It was talking about really understanding what you're measuring, what success looks like in relation to IMC. The second, very closely related to that, is demonstrating return on investment. So exactly understanding the return. So more simple, obviously, when you're looking at a more siloed approach, as maybe happened in yesteryear, but when you're looking at an integrated campaign, obviously much harder to demonstrate the return from that. And the third one that I'll share with you is more of a people issue, really. Obviously, if you have an IMC process in mind and you're trying to get your company to get full buy-in, especially for global organizations you're going to see today, that kind of top-down buy-in is absolutely essential to assure adoption. So, enough of the, as I said, slightly self-effacing bit. Now we're just going to point out everyone else's faults as well. So, just to share some slides in relation to some results in relation to statements focusing more on agencies and media owners. So same format again, advertisers in red, agencies in green. First statement, it's confusing to understand which agency is responsible for what in the agency-client relationship. And 60% of agencies saying, yes, they agree, that's true, and 47% of clients saying that's the case. Now, I think from an agency side, we will probably be saying to you, well, actually, surely that's the client's role, external role sorts to understand who does what. But I think from the advertiser's perspective, we also hear, yes, but often there's a case where the water's being muddied and perhaps agencies not playing nicely together. But that's what our panel is going to focus on in a minute, so I'll leave them to comment on that. And the second one is, agencies are not set up the right way to be able to deliver, sell a truly integrated marketing plan. And this is the biggest gap that we saw between clients and their agency partners. 75% of advertisers agreeing with that statement, and 51% of agencies. So certainly from a client perspective, that's a real issue to be tackled. And I'm not saying these two are linked, but the penultimate statement is direct dealings between advertisers and media owners is set to increase. And we've heard a little bit about this earlier on today, haven't we? But 74% of advertisers saying yes, and 59% of agencies as well. But perhaps if any media owners in the room thought you were going to get away scot-free, not, I'm afraid. Media owners, the final one was media owners are not set up and organized to deliver new and different ways to connect with consumers. And pretty much the majority, a big majority of both groups saying yes, that's the case. So 75% agencies, 69% advertisers. So I think you can see from that there's plenty of room for improvement, frankly, from everyone involved in our industry, in our ecosystem. So I think relevant for the panel today. And I'm just going to introduce them, and as I introduce them, they'll come up onto the stage. Gary Lim, he is the Regional Connections Director for Johnson & Johnson in Singapore, and also chairs our IMC forum that meets in Singapore, and he's come all the way from Singapore just for this panel today, so very warm welcome to him. Gerhard Louw, actually based in Bonn, but he hails from South Africa, so I'm taking a bit of a liberty there, pretending that he's traveled from South Africa. He hasn't. But he's in international media for Deutsche Telekom, and is no stranger to this stage. He has been up here in the past. Geoff Seely is the Global Communications Planning Director from Unilever, and he chairs our IMC forum, which meets in London. And those are your three Gs, your panelists for today, and the moderator, and again, very much not a stranger to this stage, Maarten L Albarda, who led an excellent showcase session earlier today. Maarten, before he set up his own consultancy, was the Global Connections Director at Anheuser-Busch InBev, and before that with Coca-Cola, and has been very involved with the WFA. So please join me in welcoming them.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you. Good afternoon. We are here to have some hopefully lively debate and maybe even some controversy around some of the points that were raised earlier. Feel free to Twitter or to heckle. I'm going to launch a new term. I'm going to call that twackling. If nobody else has yet done that, then I'm going to register that as well. So twackling is my new terminology for Twitter heckling. I think we've seen plenty of that already going on. So we're looking forward to your comments. We're going to dive straight in because we're a little bit pressed for time. Fantastic panel here, very diverse in background, and we're going to go and ask a couple of questions and see where we get to in the conversation. The first question I want to ask the panel is going to focus on this whole idea that on the one hand it seems that everybody now has agreed that IMC is a really good idea and everybody has embraced that, but the findings suggest that advertisers and agencies agreed to that. But at the same time, when push comes to shove, we saw that in the results, right? We're not really asking for channel neutral plans. We're being quite directive in saying, you know, we're hoping to achieve this. And so please make sure that you add this much television in these types of months and then this much digital in those types of months. Amount of spend, amount of time, and so on and so forth. So my first question really is, why is that happening if we're so convinced that IMC is such a good idea, which suggested you would start channel neutral? Gary, do you want to take a first stab at that?
Well, I think it's a confluence of a few factors, and it all boils down to, I suppose, the corporate culture and how the corporate culture relates to risk. You've got brand managers here who are there for, 2+ years. They have stretch targets. They're not going to take the risk. They want to play it safe. Then there's data. You know, we just saw Rob talking about ROI. For traditional Media 360, there's a lot of data around that. But when you talk about IMC, especially in the new digital area and in social media, there's not much ROI information around that. So hard to make a decision. And the third part is that when you don't have supporting data and ROI information, how are you going to sell that to senior management? They're not going to take the risk of with you saying, well, it's a nice to have, and it will generate this sort of sales, but I can't prove it.
Right. So Geoff, it seems a bit strange, though, that from the data that we saw earlier from Rob, it seems to say that, yeah, but senior management has accepted it. So why might that be a tough sell to them? Are they equally risk averse as maybe some of the brand managers who have to change their job every 18 months?
I think there's definitely something in the fact that, most of companies of our scale they're big organizations and they're kind of machines and they run on cycles. So, it's hard to convince someone, as Gary was saying, to poke their head above the parapet and say, I'm going to throw everything out that this company's ever known about media,
right,
and try and do something different. I mean, there's a reason that we've been doing the same thing over and over for a long time, is because we know that it works. So I do wonder whether there's a bit of a, the definition has maybe slightly changed, or the nuance of what clients might mean by media neutral planning has slightly altered, because I think, as businesses like ours, I'm sure most other advertisers have advanced in their internal media capabilities. I think advertisers who are just saying, give me a media neutral plan, are not the sort of informed advertisers who are actually going to make the right decisions. So, we come from a very informed point of view. So the plans that we ask for are plans based on information that we have of what works. So, we don't want something new for the sake of something shiny and new. We want something which is building on the learnings and knowledge that we've built up over time.
So are you better informed than your agency? Is that the conclusion?
I wouldn't say better informed, but we know what works. I think it's about predicting the outcomes, and we know what the outcomes are. I do think that we still try new things. It's not that we say we're not going to try new things, and we just want to do what we've been doing all along, because as we know, the world is changing. But I think it is also about making sure that the tried and tested methods are there, and that we deliver the results that the company expects us to do.
And so how do you then straddle this sort of maybe dichotomy or somewhat sort of two different things of, on the one hand, wanting to evolve and revolutionize, or at least evolutionize your future, and the fact that you need to deliver results. So how do you, right, so the risk averse paired with wanting to take risk, or maybe even needing to take risk?
It's got, like I said before, it's got to do with the corporate culture. You've got great companies like Google and a lot of digital companies that are willing to take some sort of risk, do some sort of test and learn to try out new areas, whereas, and maybe because they're in a great comfortable position to get sales. But a lot of companies aren't. They really have to deliver the bottom line.
Geoff?
Well, yeah, I mean,
how do you straddle? Because you guys have done some interesting stuff, right? Which is not exactly run-of-the-mill sort of the risk averse.
It's not risk averse, but again, I don't think any of our companies grew by being totally risk averse. But it's making educated risk, or educated bets. So you don't just throw money into something just because it looks cool and someone from San Francisco's flown over to tell you about it. You evaluate what it is you're trying to achieve and the contribution that might make, and then you place your bets accordingly. So I don't think, we're certainly not a risk-averse business. We're just a very educated business in the field of media, and we explore avenues that we think are going to drive our business harder than they might have done if we didn't do them. So, I think there is a question of, if you're looking at risk averseness, I think, potentially across the world, advertisers could do more to release themselves from their own processes by which they make decisions on channels. So, to give the flexibility to take, educated risk, because I think it would be fair to say it is difficult, for the reasons we were saying earlier, to convince a local brand manager to do something new when they don't have the evidence and their job's on the line.
Have you got what Facebook this morning, or I think Facebook and KitKat called, like, I can't remember exactly what they called it, like play money, right? So some risk budget or whatever you want. Do you guys have that?
Well, I would say we certainly try out a lot of things. I mean, if I look at how search has grown, for example, as a component of our total media mix, you can read a lot of studies and hear a lot of people saying search works, but until you try it, until you use it, you're not going to see if it works. So you maybe call it play money or try out money, but I think it's all about business results, checking it, measuring it to see if it works, and then if it does, the investment will grow. And I think search is a classic example of something that it's working, and therefore the investment grows.
Okay. Yeah, we have something called a digital venture fund,
right?
Especially to push the digital envelope, and where brands pitch for money, but it's a 50-50 split, and we do that globally. So I think that's been a great successful model, and they have to show us a plan, sort of like a Lion's Den type of game, sorry, Dragon's Den, and then they have to show results after 12 months to make sure that they can get the complete set of money.
And then when the going gets tough, it doesn't get cut?
Yes, it doesn't get cut.
That's excellent. I like that. Very good. In relation to that, and moving on to the next question. So from the data, it also appears that there is still confusion about the role sort between agencies, and you all have various agencies, and that agency resources are not really up to scratch yet to deliver through IMC, and that is sort of like the biggest gap that we've seen in the data. Next, you see it already behind us, the agencies are going to be on the stage here, right, and playing Agency Jeopardy. What is the one thing that you would tell the agency leadership that they could do to address it? Because the gap, right, between 75% of advertisers and 51% of agencies agree with that statement. What would you tell the agencies? What is the one thing that they could do to start addressing that gap and closing that gap so that they deliver actually what you're looking for? Maybe we'll start with you, Gerhard.
Well, I think for us, one of the key parts is that the agency needs us to help reduce complexity. I think communication, business, marketing, call it what you want, is getting more and more complex. There's so many options. Consumers have, consumer habits change. I mean, all the things that we heard today makes life very complex. And I think that is a crucial part for the agencies to make sure that life gets easier, life gets more manageable, and that's about reducing complexity. So I would say they need to do better at that.
Jeff, what would be your message?
I think my message would be wholly about collaboration. I think, it is a much more complicated market to navigate. And the analogy I always use is, 20 years ago, working in, operationalizing your media was like managing a rock band. You had a drummer, a guitarist, a keyboard player, and a singer or whatever. And it's pretty easy. You just told them what to do, they go on stage and do it. But now it's much more like an orchestra. So, our brand managers have got a massive orchestra in front of them of people to, social media analytics companies, creative agencies, digital agencies, media, PR, et cetera, et cetera. There's so many more instruments and levers for them to pull that it's got much more complex. So we need to help them navigate our internals, but we need to know that there will be a much greater sense of collaboration and just playing nice, because it's tough. I look at our brand managers and our brand directors trying to orchestrate and conduct this orchestra of millions and millions of players, and it's really hard for them.
And is it that we don't have good conductors, or do we have an unruly orchestra at our hands?
Well, I think unruly are outside, but I'm not sure it's there. No, I think we can improve as conductors, and these are skill sets that our brand guys need to have. And I think previously the media department in advertising companies was, aligned to the finance guys, and now media is kind of front and center of how our brands, operate with their communications. So our brand teams are having to skill up really quickly in the ways of the world of media, which is why people like us exist inside the organization. So,
all right. Are you the conductor?
No, but but I help the conductors. Like for digital immigrants like me, I recommend that for agencies, our existing partners and new partners, potential new partners, especially in the new media area, they have to sort of help the brands get educated. They show them how to play, and most importantly, they show them how to win. Once you can do those sort of things, the relationship's set, and then the conductor knows what role you have to play.
Mm-hmm. And then you pay them fairly for all of that.
Of course.
Of course. Okay. Very good. All right, we're going to the next part, which is this sort of agreement between both advertisers and agencies that direct media owner deals between advertisers and media owners will increase. There was a couple of interesting things about that. So first of all, it's interesting to see that both advertisers and agencies agree with that. So why do you think this is such a common agreed sort of point of view? Especially also if you think about it, because the agencies that agree with it are basically then saying, yeah, so our role of the traditional middleman is going to decrease and is going to be less important or less part of the equation.
I don't see it that way. I think that there is a great role for agencies. Like, we like working with media vendors straight away because speed to market. Mm-hmm. They have ideas, we probe their ideas, they give a response back, and we can say yes or no straight away.
And then the Kit Kat is in space 24 hours later.
Exactly, so that's a great example of it. Right. But then also, like, the smarter clients will have their media partners with them to do the due diligence. You know, is it the right strategy? And also to stop us from having the shiny object syndrome, you know, when we get to see media vendors. So media agencies do have a strong role to play, and they're always sitting by our sides.
Okay. Jim, how do you see the role of the agency evolving?
Well, I see it as a bit of a pointed question because it's trying to suggest that agencies are getting cut out the loop, and I know certainly in our case, that's not how it is. Instead of being a linear with a middleman, it's just a three-way relationship now, and I think there's a couple of reasons for that. The first reason is that a lot of the products that are coming from digital companies are incredibly complex, so we need to, we're all learning at the same time, and we need to understand the complexity of those products in order to be able to create for them. But I think the second point is that these are much more than just paid media platforms. They're not just places where we advertise. In cases like, in somewhere like Facebook, it's where our brand lives and breathes and it has its personality. So it touches many other parts of the marketing cycle than just the media element of it.
So are you saying, in other words, that a GRP was easy to understand by one guy and then he could sort of deal with an agency to sort of figure out how many he needed, whereas with this, there's a much bigger group of people that need to get involved to get it done?
I mean, the relationship with a platform like Facebook, that will plug into our creative agency, our digital agency, PR agency, social agency, rather than our relationship potentially with a more traditional media company from a few years ago would have been, we want to buy some TV, so we'll go to our agency and they'll buy it. And that can be a linear process. But
still sounds to me that the role of the traditional media agency within that mix then diminishes or becomes smaller relative to all the other partners that now also need a seat at the table.
I don't think it diminishes. It's just a bigger, more complex product that we're having to work with. So the media agency absolutely has, a fundamental role in how we navigate that product, but through the lens of what it looks like as a media platform. Right. So rather than us expecting them to do the job of, how we monetize fans or how we, engage audiences.
So Gerhard, from middleman to seat at the table?
I think so. I think what's maybe also interesting, and maybe that's a bit more of a controversial point, is that also the role of the agency in terms of a buying tool or as a buying, in its buying role, maybe that is changing. Maybe it has to do with the fact that our procurement departments back home are very involved, very, very active. They want to have much more transparency. Sorry for the big word, because I know it's a big issue. And was also addressed last year. In this panel, there was a lot of discussion about transparency, transparency of prices, demand-side platforms, real-time bidding, etc. So I think a lot of what I get from the procurement guys is there are a lot of question marks about the prices. Mm-hmm. So I think this is also a trend, that there's the role of the agency in its buying function is maybe questioned. Maybe not by us as the marketers, but by our procurement colleagues, and therefore they want to get involved. They want to get to the guys who are actually selling the media space, and they want to get involved more in negotiations, in prices, and I think that's also a trend that is definitely driving this point that there are more direct deals.
So Gary, is your role then with different people within the agency than what your procurement people, the role that your procurement marketing people have with the agency? So is it really, you don't look at the buying anymore and that is now handled by procurement and you're doing more of the strategy part, the conducting part, or how is that evolving?
A bit of both. I definitely have to keep an eye on buying, but I love strategy and I love playing in the strategy area, coming up with a big idea. So our ecosystem of agencies has increased a lot, like having research agencies. So we do have to make sure that they all sing the same tune and are going in the right direction. So I am continually spending more time with those agencies and just making sure that everybody plays together, plays nicely together. And then with the buying stuff, it's obviously with an eye on doing that. But our media agencies do all the buying process for us, not our procurement agency.
Is that similar to how Unilever is doing it? Do you have procurement in all that?
Yeah, we have procurement.
Do you play nice with them, or do they play nice with you?
Absolutely. I mean, we're all on the same side. We're all trying to get the same result. I think, if I could distinguish between the two, if procurement are about the price, we're about the value. So we're trying to make sure that the decisions we make and that we advise our brand partners are based on the value that they're going to get from a particular structure of a comms plan.
Okay. Any last words, Gerhard, on this point or in general?
No, I find it very interesting, just comparing this conference to the last conference last year, for example, and the year before, where it was all about this crazy new thing or shiny new thing, digital, and how it's going to change our lives. And I'm very happy to see that we've now moved on and see it as part of the mix, and we're talking about integrated communications and the role that the digital plays within the total mix. So it's not about one or the other, it's about the and effect, and I'm happy that we got to that point.
Well, I want to thank my panel here assembled today. As you can see on the screen, we have the infographic up, and you can download it for free and learn more at wfanet.org. Feel free to download it, share it, and hopefully take some learning away from it, and also hopefully you took some learning away from the panel here. And it's been my pleasure hosting it, and we'll hand it over to the next team, which is going to be the agencies, and see if they agree or disagree or have evolved their thinking on the basis of what you've heard today here from the panel. Thank you very much.